All right, we're about 2 minutes past. I think I am going to get started. So I'd just like to officially say welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning to some of you. Thank you for joining AVAP's Higher Education Roundtable series called Jumping the Hurdles with Workday. It's in honor of the upcoming Summer Olympics. But today we have Stevens Institute of Technology CIO Tej Patel and Colorado Mountain College Director of IT Training and ERP Project Manager, Chris Wenger. And they're going to be here to talk about how they prepared their campuses for their upcoming, their respective Workday deployments. So we're really excited you could be here today. My name's Amy LaHate. I lead our higher education practice at AVAP. I started my career working in higher ed, working in student services, and then spent the past 20 years helping institutions select, implement, and optimize ERP systems. I've been in the Workday ecosystem for about 6 years. Also worked at Ellucian for many years, if you're familiar. I implemented student systems. So I'm going to let all of the speakers introduce themselves in a minute. I did want to cover a couple logistical items before we get started. Today's webinar will be on demand on avap.com, but for anyone who is registered, you're going to receive a recording after today's presentation. So please feel free to share it with your colleagues. If you have any questions during the session, you can also feel free to use the chat. So you will be on mute, but we'll be monitoring the chat, and you can pop in questions, pop in feedback, and we're going to do our best to get through them. If we don't get through them all, we will follow up with you. And then at the end of the session, there will be a survey. And of course, we welcome your feedback, and especially if you have ideas for future sessions. What else? Today's format is a little bit more informal. We're not going to have a big presentation with slides. It's going to be a conversation. And I think we have a cross-section of institutions here today. So I think there's folks who are jumping into the chat to say where you're calling in from, but if you could list your institution, maybe even share your weather, because I know it's really hot here, so I'd be jealous if other of you guys are in cooler places. But again, welcome. I'm excited that we get everybody together today. I think we have a great group, and I'm going to pass it over to Matt Geltema. He is our Senior Program Director at AVAP, and he's going to kick things off and facilitate today's conversation. Matt.
You're on mute.
Every time I'm muted. Thanks so much, Amy. I appreciate that. And thank you all for joining. It's great to have you join us today just to talk about and hear more about Workday journeys, and especially about a journey to Workday, not Workday journeys, the product. And just to hear from other institutions, share with each other some of the key pieces in preparing your institution for success. My name is Matt. As Amy mentioned, I've been at AVAP for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was 22 years in higher ed. And so I've been through, as a client, a Workday implementation, and now I'm doing that as a consultant, and love the challenge. But today, we'd love to hear just a little bit from you. Vanessa has a couple of poll questions, and Vanessa, I'm wondering if you can pop up the first one. So we'd just love to hear a little bit about, where are you? What's your current system? And once we start seeing some answers roll in, Vanessa, if you can pop up the next question, that would be great. And then while we're doing that, I would like to have our guests, Tej and Chris, just introduce yourselves. Tell us about your institution, where you're located, where you are in your Workday journey, and why you chose Workday. Chris, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Chris, and I was tapped to be our project manager about 2 years ago. Prior to that, I've been at Colorado Mountain College for a little over 14 years in various roles. I've been in academic and technology roles for the last 20 plus years. And we always like to think ourselves to be unique. We are in some ways, as a college, Our college district, we cover 7,500 square miles and 8 counties in the Rocky Mountains, which does include 24 14,000 peaks, 14,000 foot peaks for anyone who's interested, and 18 ski resorts. So we have 11 different campuses spread out all over a huge area. We're also a dual mission institution. So we serve both certificates and associate's degrees, but we offer about 10 bachelor's degrees. And we're an HSI, a Hispanic Serving Institution as well. So we have a lot of diversity within our organization and with our constituents. In terms of our Workday journey or how we got to Workday, very quickly, a couple of years ago, we recognized that our current ERP and SIS system was end of life. It was on premise, and we were looking for a SaaS, a cloud-based solution. So we started a process that included RFPs, and we ended up with three different systems that wanted to try to earn our business. So we went through a process last year. This time it was about April. We had those on site, and they did demos for us, and we got to ask a lot of questions. They spent a lot of time with us, and through that process, we decided that Workday was going to be the way that we wanted to go. It maybe wasn't as complete a solution in some of the areas as others, but we felt like it had the longevity that we were looking for, and that it was going to continue to evolve and grow in ways that would benefit our institution. And I don't think we've regretted that decision yet. So I think we're in a good space.
So Chris is being modest. Chris, I'm wondering if I can put you on the spot here.
Sure.
What is this week like at on CMC's Workday journey?
Yeah, so on Monday of this week, we went live with the HCM portion of platform, which will be followed by a go live on Monday, July 1st, of our finance. So yeah, we'll talk a little more specifics about that journey over the last 9+ months is really what it's been for us, which has been exciting and terrifying at the same time. But yeah, we're really happy that we're making progress in transforming our institution through Workday.
Yeah, it's a busy and exciting time. Chris, I'm so glad that you could carve out some time to share with us today.
Sure, my pleasure.
Tej, I'm wondering if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about Stevens and your Workday journey. It's quite different.
Yeah, sure. First of all, it's great to be here, Matt, and I appreciate the invite. And Chris, congratulations on a major milestone to you and your team. I am Tej Patel. I'm the Vice President for Information Technology and CIO for Stevens Institute of Technology. Stevens is located in Hoboken, New Jersey. We are a premier research private institution. The university is known for a strong emphasis on engineering, science, technology, along with business and management programs. We offer a little over 100 degrees, undergrad, grad, PhD, so on and so forth, primarily around computer engineering, chemical, civil, so on and so forth. We are located in the heart of Hoboken, so we have a fantastic view of the New York skyline, and we acquired about a 55-acre in the heart of Hoboken. So it's really a fascinating campus, beautiful campus, and if you are ever in that part of the world, I do invite you to stop by and visit us. In terms of our Workday journey, it's really interesting. That's the way I define it. About 10 years ago, we acquired Workday HCM and payroll, and we went live with it. And then we were the design partner for Workday Student, and we were one of the first adopter of Workday Student as well. That project lasted for 6 to 8 years, and we finally went live with Workday Student about a couple of years ago, 2021, 2022. In between, we started to adopt product like Workday Adaptive, and we most recently we also adopted Workday Extend. And some of you might be wondering, where is Workday Finance in all of this, right? Yeah, we forgot about Workday Finance back in those days, right? So we partnered with Eva, particularly Matt and his team earlier this year to bring Workday Finance into our Workday ecosystem at Stevens. We are about halfway through, and Matt and his team have been phenomenal to guide us through this journey, and we'll be launching Workday Finance on July 1st of 2025. So Chris, we are probably about 12 months behind you. So we'll be talking a whole lot over the next several months.
Thank you both. And thanks to all of you who chimed in on the poll. I see that we have people from across the board as far as systems, and likely across the board as far as knowledge in Workday. You may hear some terminology today that isn't really familiar. I'm going to toss out a couple of them right now, but please, if you hear terms or acronyms along the way, do feel free to chime in and ask for that. You may hear Workday Platform. So Workday Platform is the general term for HCM, financials, payroll. When higher ed is doing an implementation, we really call it platform and student. And the platform implementation generally goes first, unless you're Stevens. And then it's student is right in the middle. Also, you may hear the acronym PAT, and that is payroll, absence, and time tracking. So if there are others, please do ask. And along those lines, Vanessa chimed in the chat too. Please do feel free to make this session interactive. If you have questions along the way, please do ask those. We are saving some time for questions at the end, but if there's something just along the way, please let us know. So jumping in, Tej, I'm wondering if you can talk about leading and supporting a team. One of the things I've been so impressed with the Stevens team on is your leadership alignment and how your leaders have prepared your team well, and then you step back, you empower the team, and then you let them do the job, making sure that they have time for it. Can you talk about how that worked at Stevens? The planning involved in that project?
Yeah, a great question, Matt. First and foremost, Workday implementation is a significant undertaking for any campus, as you all know, or any size of organization, right? And ensuring your team has the time, resources, and support, more importantly, quote unquote, the need to ensure the success of such transformative implementation, it's critical, right? Now, coming to Stevens, how we approach some of the transformative projects, and I will speak in more general terms, Matt, because I do feel that a lot of transformative projects such as ERP or LMS, and they have a lot of ingredients that overlap with each other, right? So for us at Stevens, the most important thing that I do as a CIO, along with our cabinet members, is it's really find the business alignment while looking at the university's strategic plan. In our case, it's Stevens 2032, inspired by humanity, powered by technology, and really look at what are some of the callouts that we have that we need to achieve by end of 2032, right? So the conversation starts at that level. From there, we look at our existing landscape in terms of technology. What are some of our digital ambitions? What our student experience look like? And then we really have conversations with the cabinet members, presidents, and boards to make sure that we have secured executive level buy-ins, starting from budget to understanding the impact, on a daily operations, as well as what it may look like financially, given the enrollment and everything else that we are seeing and experiencing. So that's where we spend tremendous amount of time to fully understand and make sure that the senior level leadership, executive leadership, is fully supportive of any initiatives that we have going on, right? From then, we really bring together a cross-functional teams to lead such projects. So for example, I don't know if a couple of team members are on the call, but I will give them a big shout out. From IT, we have Steve Flanagan, and from finance, we have Jamie Hotelling. They are leading our Workday finance project for us, right? So we try to bring those teams together, and then we have champions from each of the different impacted area, business area, that they will have significant say into process decompositions, right, throughout those early conversations. And then really from the executive sponsor's perspective, what I do is really empower the team, set the clarity, vision, and really get out of their way, and let them do what they do best. And that's the way we try to approach some of the major transformative projects. Then throughout the journey, right, the regular check-ins become more important, right? I would have a lot of conversation with the project leads. As I mentioned, we partnered with AWAP, so I have a lot of conversation with Matt and his team. We find ways to reallocate their responsibility, because day-to-day operations needs to be supported, needs to be ran. In cases, some of the cases, we also have backfilled critical positions. But this is where the earlier conversation comes into play, right? Securing executive level buy-ins to make sure that this initiative will deliver value to university, that will deliver a competitive advantage for us, right? And the most important thing that I do, and I hope my team agrees, is really I try very hard to protect their time. These projects, they don't get done in 12, 18, 16 months. They take really long time. And my job is to really make sure that they remain focused. I protect their time, and I create a safe environment for them where they feel really empowered, and they can perform at their best level. So that is how, Matt, we approach some of the transformative projects at Stevens.
That's great. Thanks, Tej. So Chris, let's dig into some of what you're in the middle of right now. Because CMC, you're just finishing that platform deployment. And a few weeks ago, we started a student deployment. So you are in the you have the unique opportunity to say, I was tapped 2 years ago to be this project manager, and we had a year of run up to that to prepare. And then we did it, we did it, and now we're doing it again. So I'm wondering, what does that run up look like for CMC to prepare you for success? And what did you learn the first time around that you're like, maybe we want to do this a little different for student?
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning process. Only 1 or 2 of our project team members have been through a previous ERP implementation, and that was 20 plus years ago at Colorado Mountain College. So we didn't know what we didn't know. And as you probably recall, we've asked a lot of questions along the way. Mm-hmm. And so given our lack of experience, particularly in this area, I think the biggest lesson I have learned, having gone through platform in a really concentrated time frame, is getting everyone to understand and setting the expectations for what's needed for staff resourcing and time commitments. Going back to kind of what Tej alluded to there, it can be overwhelming at times for project team members. So there's certain critical milestones that have to be hit, and it's all hands on deck. You've got to do whatever you can to meet those. So you really have to have a plan to augment the team or offload other day-to-day job responsibilities so that those individuals can focus on the work that needs to be done and not feel as if their day job is being neglected at the same time, which all of those responsibilities still need to happen, and they need to happen in a timely fashion. I'm thinking in particular of, our payroll team. There were times where they were full out on Workday, but everyone wants to get paid. So how do you make sure that they're not working way too many hours and being stressed out beyond their capabilities? So really, platform has been a great test run for us. Those two teams were pretty small and pretty well-oiled machines, and their managers were very hands-on and willing to do whatever was needed to help them proceed and get through those times. But as we move into a larger project like student, it's much bigger. It's going to take longer. We need to really be prepared for that. So that's been the primary focus for me, is getting that group to understand what this looks like. And to this point, it's been a bit of a struggle for them to kind of mentally get into that space. But we have had a good discussion the past week using the tool that you provided. Thank you, Matt. And I think it finally started to sink in what the reality of the commitment is. So we're ahead of the game in that regard as we move into student.
Yeah, I feel that way too. So the tool that we provided that Chris mentioned is actually a tool that AVEP has been working with for the last couple of years, that we call our client resourcing and forecasting tool, CRAFT. And it's a tool that actually Stevens used, Colorado Mountain College used, to actually just take the estimates for how much time it will take for your team to do this. Recognizing that in higher ed, often you have multiple people doing a single role on a project, or you have a single person doing multiple roles on a project. And in almost every case, you have a person on the project who also has a day job or part of their day job that they're still juggling. So to really help understand and visualize, who's overloaded, for example. So,
and just as an aside, Matt, we had someone, the first go through, we had someone who had like 78 hours a week that was assigned to them. And so it was a great visual to say that's not doable. So let's dial that down a bit.
Tej is laughing because Stevens had the same thing. I said to someone, I'm worried about your role. There's only one of you. And I think it made for a helpful conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to preparing institutionally, making sure that you're giving people capacity and license to do a project, I'm wondering if either of you found creative solutions to keep your team motivated. And along those lines, I'm interested in, from our attendees, all of us in IT have done, whether it's an ERP project that happens maybe once a generation, or as Tej was talking about, other major projects, are there little things that you found along the way that were wins to keep your team motivated? Tej, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt. As I was mentioning while I was reading your question earlier, right before this call, a lot of thinking around here, right? And I'll tell you, I don't know the right answer for this, but I'll tell you what has worked for us. At least I would like to believe that, right? But a successful Workday implementation, going through our Workday student journey, right? What I learned is it's not about Workday so much, right? It's about culture. It's about relationships, right? It's about bringing the people together that really work well and really complement each other, right? So keep that as a context with a strong leadership, clear communication, and a commitment to supporting the team goes a long way. And some of the ways that we do this is we try to celebrate successes frequently, not at the end of it or not at the beginning, but more frequently. That's number one. Number two is I had to change my mindset because majority of our team, Matt, as you know, 75% of our population works predominantly in a remote fashion, right? Mm-hmm. And when you are introducing a change like this, where you're 25% of the staff on campus, 75% remote, and then your implementation partner also works remote, right? we need to be intentional around finding those opportunities to bring all these constituents together on campus at least once, twice, or 3 times if you can afford it as part of your project, right? So that's number 2. Number 3 is incentives, right? Whether we like it or not, we need to find creative ways to reward these folks who are doing double duties, right? Um, uh, the area that I like to talk about is creating opportunities for mentorship, training, and workshops, right? If you, as a leader, when you create these opportunities for your colleagues who are going through this journey, it becomes as much easier because they will be involved, they will be learning, they will be growing, and there is that career aspect of it, right? When you reskill and upskill folks, right, they really appreciate that. So that's another thing that I learned. One of the things that I haven't tried that I'm planning to in the coming months is organizing social events along with team building exercises, right? I have never tried that aspect, but I have tried that with my own team, and it works very well. And the last one is it's really around how do we create a work environment that is human centric, right? Because as Chris said, 78 hours a week, it's just not humanly possible, right? A burnout is going to take place. So having a visible leadership at a top level to create that encouraging environment, the safe environment that I talked about, those are some of the creative ways we try to keep the team motivated and make sure that they're fully supported, they have resources, and as I said, right, create the guide rails and vision for them, and then let them do what they're best. Matt, I hope it helps. But as I said, I don't have a one fixed answer for this question.
And that's fair. And honestly, every institution is different, right?
Yeah,
And every
it's
project
unique.
is different. So
Yeah.
Chris, has your team picked up on any or tried any creative things to keep folks motivated, or anything you are planning to pull out for student?
Yeah, I think we'll probably tend to be more creative with our student implementation. That group, it's just a different group of people and different group of leadership. Our HR and finance groups were pretty focused and dialed in, and so for them, as Tej mentioned, we used some form of compensation, which I think was creative in some ways. It was depending on the level of effort and criticality of the task that they were engaged in at particular times. So it wasn't something that was standardized. It was dependent on each person, and then the compensation was commiserate with that. And I would say this, regardless of all the other creative things, the parties, the whatever that you might come up with, the games, those sorts of things, communication has been really huge. We've had regular meetings with those who've been internal to the project and those who are adjacent to it, and just having an open space to talk about the project and issues, concerns, celebrate accomplishments, have a forum where people can feel like they can be heard as they're going through this process, I think has been a really good way to keep people motivated. And as I keep telling the team, if we don't know about it, we can't help you, we can't address it. So you need to be willing to share if you're struggling, so that I can have a conversation with your manager to say, we need to find some help, we need to augment that position, or whatever we can do to alleviate that stress on everyone's lives, because we're asking everyone to do their job plus, and over a period of time that does wear on people naturally, you would expect. So those are just some of the thoughts I have, and definitely into student, we're going to have to do more and more often, I think, to keep people motivated over a 2-year time span.
Tej alluded to it, but as I did my Workday implementation as a customer, our platform implementation was pre-pandemic, and our student implementation was post-pandemic, and it was very different because post-pandemic we were largely remote, and pre-pandemic we were together. So that actually does force some more creativity, right? One of the things we had a ton of fun with was after a hard week of testing together. This was pre-pandemic. We said, hey, on Friday we're gonna have a potluck. Bring something. And it actually was a whole lot more fun than just bringing in pizza or sandwiches or something like that, because everybody could kind of bring their own, show a little bit about themselves, right? One other thing that we did that seemed like a little thing was my fellow project manager and I just hand wrote thank you notes or a recognition of some sort. And we put a $20 Starbucks or Chipotle or something gift card in it. And we handed those to everybody on the team. And I didn't really think much of it. It took a half an hour of work. And I recognize that some state institutions, you can't just give a gift card and that's fine. But what I learned actually was it was the card that mattered. And a year later, I walked into someone's office and saw that thing still pinned up on the bulletin board.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just tiny things like that.
Matt, I think I do want to add another topic to this. I do something similar to it, but I don't write a card. But I never missed to wish a happy birthday to my team members. If they're on the call, I'm sure they will know, but I would take time out to write a personalized Teams message to acknowledge that. And that goes a long way, I agree.
Yeah, great. So we all know that an ERP implementation or a student information system implementation it gets branded as a technology project, but you are changing the institution. And managing that change, there is some art to that. And there's actually process to it. It's called change management or organizational change management. Chris, I'm wondering if you can tell us about how change management came into play in preparing for CMC's Workday deployment. And how did you prepare your project team, but also the larger community of your faculty, staff, students?
Yes, so change management actually started occurring, whether intentional or not, before the project began. As we went through that ERP selection process, everyone in the institution had an opportunity to see the new systems that were available, and they quickly understood and realized that it would drastically alter and improve potentially the way we did business from our legacy system. And so once we chose Workday and then AVAP to be our implementation partner, it became easier to kind of direct our energy into the specifics of what that transformation would look like based on, okay, this is the way Workday is going to drive what we do here at the institution. On a real practical level, our executive team and the steering committee, we understood the need to be really open and transparent about everything with this project, the cost, the effort, whatever else was involved, and to really communicate outcomes to the project, to everybody, the community. So we've been pretty diligent in doing that. And in particular, again, with your assistance, Matt, we created that vision statement and we had guiding principles that we could refer to during the process. And we have those highlighted and available. And anytime we get stuck, we can go back to those. And they're pretty simple, that it's straightforward. I think that's been very helpful for us in understanding where we want to get to with this. Again, it's the system is going to underline our efforts, but it's really our culture. How are we going to use the system to embed those guiding principles into what we do? And then the other thing is, because we do have multiple campuses spread out over such a large area, it was really incumbent for all of our leadership involved to take the opportunities that they had when engaging with those campus members to talk about the project, give them updates, communicate to them, get feedback from them, what questions do they have? Because our campuses in many regards have been at a distance, our central offices have been kind of driving this project, and our campuses have been involved and engaged, but not heavily into the project team itself. So just having that communication flow going both ways was hugely important. And then as we have approached the final phase of the platform implementation project, we knew we needed additional help getting across the finish line. So that's when we engaged your OCM services at AVAP to help provide and coordinate communication and training activities. We knew that those are going to be really critical to having the project start off successfully. And so now that we are moving into student, which is significantly larger, we feel we have a solid foundation in place. We understand what this looks like, but we've got a ton of work to do. So internally, we need to do a lot. We will be, leaning and relying on OCM again from AVAP to help us what that looks like. And so we're looking forward to it. This is the first little shift. We're trying to move that ship in the ocean to avoid the iceberg, right? And it doesn't take one move, it takes hours and days potentially to turn us around and in a different direction. So we're started to head in the right direction. We need to continue that momentum and get us culturally ready for this next phase.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. Tej, I'm wondering if you can explain Stevens' approach to change management in your current implementation, and really how you value the role and importance of how you view the role and importance of change management as a CIO at Stevens.
Everything Chris said, I really agree with him. The reason I was smiling is I'm a big Maya Angelou fan, and it reminded me of this quote: "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the change it has gone through to achieve that beauty," right? So from a CIO perspective, the change management is the new leadership in technology nowadays, right? From my perspective for Stevens, value realization is an important aspect of change management for me, right? And it's really critical for us to come together upfront and decide what the success will look like, right? Then define what KPIs are we going to look to say, hey, we are at X, we need to get to Y, and make sure that we can get there on time, on budget, right? So that's the major shift in from the leadership perspective. But there are 6 or 7 things from a CIO perspective that I want to share with this audience. And starting with, as Chris said, communicate. These are long journeys, and people come and go, and a lot of time I think gets lost in transition. So keeping the communication as a top priority helps with the change management. Matt, you said earlier, every organization is unique, so is every change is unique, right? I will add one more thing: every initiative is unique, right? So you need to understand that. Start with the end in the mind, right? Again, going back to what the success will look like, right? Define that. The most aspect of any change that I spend a lot of time is understanding the culture for that particular division, school, or part of the university that will be impacted by that particular change, because essentially you are going to change someone's life upside down. In higher ed, a lot of times we don't upgrade systems for 20, 30, 40 years. And all of a sudden you go from DOS-based screen to a web-based interface, right? Can we make sure, do we have a courage to walk a mile in their shoes to really feel what this change will do to them, right? Then and only then you can really understand and bring those changes to live and production environments, right? Create an environment where it's a win-wins for everyone, right? Whether it's finance or technology, or HCM or technology, or students and academic enterprise aspect of it, right? And the last one is it's critical to embrace relentless incrementalism to help achieve radical change, right? So it's my job as an executive sponsor to make sure that I'm relentless, absolute relentless, to make sure that I'm communicating bottom up, top down, and making sure I'm connecting the dots, and I'm available, I'm visible throughout this journey. So these are some of the steps, Matt, we have taken at Stevens to ensure our transformative journeys meet our digital ambitions to support faculty, staff, and students. The last thing that I want to talk about, particularly in a realm of Workday ecosystem, is we have a culture of one Workday on campus. Okay, one Workday period, whether it's HCM, adaptive, extend, students, and finance soon, and Workday learning will be the next, Matt, as you know. The culture is one Workday, and we have a Workday governance in place, right? That I chair that committee along with 4 cabinet members, including the provost, right? And we ensure that there's a tight integration across the board in terms of how we are approaching the utilization of Workday on campus to make sure that the community benefits from it. So that is how we approach some of those and to mitigate the risk, Matt.
I love that approach to 360 support, really, from top down, from the bottom up, peers supporting each other. That's great. So we are at almost quarter to the hour, and we have a question in the Q&A, and we can continue. I could ask Tej and Chris questions for 2 more hours. Yeah. But if you have any questions, please do drop them in the Q&A or drop them in the chat, and we'll get through as many as we can. So our question from the Q&A is, can you recommend approaches to engaging senior leadership in situations where they may not fully understand the implications of a big project, and especially the impact on the project team and some of the sacrifices that are being asked of them? So I know both of your institutions, I mean, we've talked about senior leadership support, right? Yeah. Have you been in a situation with a project where you had to go lobby for some of that senior level support? And Austin Bradshaw introduced himself, but you know, Austin, I know you've worked with so many organizations and sometimes deal with the challenges when there's not that support. I'd love to hear your perspective too.
Austin, why don't we start with you and Chris, and we're happy to chime in.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. I'm the Senior Vice President over the Workday Delivery Organization here at AVAP. I'll keep my introduction that brief so that we can keep this conversation going. And so from my perspective, I've seen the gamut, as Matt mentioned, of clients. I've been in the consulting game for well over 20 years. And you know, not every organization has strong leaders like Tej and Chris that can see the vision and know and the drive toward that vision in terms of what they want the end goal and the outcome and the result to look like. So before I kind of get into more of a tactical answer to that, I will start with that. Your senior leadership has to see the vision. They have to see the end and know what that looks like and know why it's important to lead your college or university into the next generation of transformation and what the implications are if they don't do that, right? Sitting in their seat. They know that they'll stagnate. They'll know that they won't be able to keep up with the other institutions around them in the state or around the country. So that's first. If that's not there, you're going to have a hard uphill battle trying to get them to support you as you try to talk to them about the burden on the team. So a very tactical tool that we've used and deployed on a frequent basis is a simple heat map, if you will, of people's availability. When you lay up someone's workload against the project timeline and the demands that project will require of that person, because there's only so many subject matter experts you're going to have. Right. Yeah. But when you put those up together and red starts to appear everywhere, that's really easy for anybody to understand, right? You don't have to sit there and explain everything for hours and hours. They'll ask questions on well, why do we have, you know, people doubled up here or doubled up there? If I'm looking at this right, I'm seeing 2 and 3 FTEs where currently we have 1. Is that what you're telling me, right? getting them that visual representation usually is a very effective tool for sticking in their brain and understanding, hey, this is coming. And you can do that at the very beginning of the project. You can do that before the project even starts. If you're in the sales cycle and you want to talk to your partner about that, and you know, it's something we do for our customers because we want them to understand where those roadblocks are going to be. And then from there, you take that and you say, all right, yeah, they got to leave their day jobs. They're going to have to go and feed into the design of Workday because they're the only ones that know this information. We can supplement, you know, and come with plan Bs, right? We can supplement with staff augmentation resource that already know Banner or whatever the, you know, the system you're on. That's going to be easier to find than someone who's been with the institution for, you know, 15 years and has been running, you know, the registrar's office or whatever the case may be, right? Those people are rare. The people that can supplement the day jobs are not as rare, right? So come up with the problem first. Here's what we see. Here's the consequences of these people being overloaded and burning out. You do not want that knowledge walking out the door. So here's what we recommend as a plan to back that up. So that's generally how I approach that. And Tej or Chris will stop there and let you chime in.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'll just say something really quickly. I mean, you need to know your audience. You need to know what that executive sponsor or above, what's going to really tap into their passion and willingness to support something like this. And for us, we're a fairly flat organization. We're pretty small compared to many others. And it was a really simple conversation with our executive leader in this regard, our chief operating officer. You know, he just wants to know, how is this going to positively impact our students?
Yeah.
And so we were just able to make the case that any system was going to potentially be a benefit, but we, after doing our due diligence, you know, we didn't come to this lightly. We went through a long process. You know, there was a plan in place. We felt that Workday we were going to be able to leverage it to really impact our students more than any other system. And a byproduct of that was that it was also going to make our staff, you know, and faculty, their lives a little easier too along the way. And as soon as we made that case, he was on board, and then it was for us, our trustees have to vote on, you know, financial issues of this sort and these types of contracts. They're a very supportive board. And again, when they heard those sorts of statements about this will help our students be more successful, and here are some reasons why, it was a pretty easy sell for us.
Yeah. For Stevens, the journey is slightly different. I didn't think we had to sell Workday Finance, for example, right? Because we are already knee deep into Workday. But there are two important aspects at the executive leadership level, cabinet president and the board. Number one is I had to make very clear that IT will not lead this project. IT will partner. IT will be an executive sponsor for this project, but we will need business to work with us and make sure that we fully understand your day-to-day operations, right? And IT will fill in the gap where the technology is required, and the business will fill in the gap where the business decisions need to be made. The second one is, and I will use Workday Finance as an example. I had to have a lot of conversation with our CFO to make sure he understood the overall impact, right? Why we needed Workday now and why we shouldn't wait while we have Kuali contract not expiring for next several years, and where we are on the journey of our Workday ecosystem. Once he understood this, right, I had to educate a lot of people on my team, our board as well. And both of us partnered up then to work with our president and the trustees to make sure that we have the resources that we need, we have the project budget that we have, and then our two stellar project managers and along with the web team really helped us to bring it all together, where both executive sponsor, in this case CFO and CIO, feel very comfortable how this project is approaching, right? So again, I don't want to just say the relationship, yeah, it's there, but I think what's really important is you need to have some credibility, right? whether you are IT, finance, or HR or academic, we need to have some credibility. We need to have a clear understanding of our strategic priorities at the university level, like Chris, you said, faculty engagement, student success, right, experiences, and so on and so forth. And then when you create that business case that has considered all of these ingredients, right, and then you present a number that is realistic, right, that includes backfilling, resources, and so on and so forth, the sell becomes much easier because now you're educating them, you're making them aware of risk management. How are you going to manage that risk more importantly, right? So when I talk to my counterpart on the Workday Finance, as Matt knows, the conversation is more about managing that risk, right? We know the things are going well, everything is in green, right? But what are the risks we are still not aware of? And when that happens, how can we mitigate those risks, right? So that is how we try to get in executive level buy-ins, and then we frequently update the president and the board. We have a separate audit and risk committee, so this is a standing agenda topic from now on until the product launches, right? So there are multiple ways to keep everyone up to date and make sure that we have their buy-in and support.
Yeah, that's great. All great advice. Vanessa, I'm wondering if we can toss up our third poll question because it ties in really well with the next question that we got through the Q&A. And we've got to watch the time here. We have about 4 minutes, 5 minutes here, and we'll get as far as we can. But I'm wondering, this is a great question. Any recommendations on how to have the campus stop asking for more changes and separate projects during an ERP implementation, right? So if you're going straight through from platform to student, that's that might be almost 3 years. Resources are tapped yet already, but it doesn't feel acceptable to say no. So any advice on our tactics on that?
It's a really great question, Matt, and this goes really back to your PMO organization, right? How the projects are prioritized, what scorecards are being used, who's requesting certain projects, and what would be overall impact for your institution, right? So yes, this type of projects will last for 12, 18, 24 months minimum, right? But at the same time, you cannot ignore projects like a use of generative AI, maybe, or extended reality lab, or high performance computing cluster, and so on and so forth. So that's where you really have to look at your overall ambitions, your overall strategic plan, and the direction, and bring the right people into the conversation to make that conversation and decision making more easier. The IT governance plays a critical role into this as well from a CIO perspective. And another thing that I do is we rely on good vendor partners like Eval, right? Because we know we cannot take on everything on our own. We have a very lean, as our president would call, IT team and the finance team and the HR team, right? So at times we have to rely on strong vendor partnership to bring in those vendors that we trust. I'll give you an example. Workday Learning is an example, right? Our resources are tapped out, but it's a requirement. We need to meet certain compliance need, training, and so on and so forth, and it's a need. So we will have a vendor partner come in and help us with the implementation for this project. So look at ways to prioritize all of your projects, right? Have a scorecard in place, involve your top level decision makers, and then make an informed decision, right? Keeping in mind what will be value add by doing A project versus doing B project while your eyes are set on large ERP transformation projects. So this kind of mindset could really help you determine what would be the next project that you will do. And then you have a good vendor partners who you can rely and you can deliver both projects simultaneously. Chris,
Yeah,
I got your thoughts.
Chris, do you have anything to add there quickly? You're on mute.
Yeah, it happens. Always happens once. I mean, part of this process naturally led people to look at their other systems and say, are these the systems that we want to carry forward with this new, larger ERP system? So you're going to get some of that naturally. And then it's just a question of governance and deciding, does that make sense? How well does it integrate? And you move that ball forward. Other ones, you can't avoid it. The product is at end of life, or it's not meeting your needs. And so you're going to have to make a switch. So you just have to, but you have to have people understand just there's a priority to this, and their priority may not align quite well enough with other priorities to get that first spot. So sometimes people say, well, if I have to wait a year, then let's just wait a year and I won't worry about it. So you'd have to deal with it case by case.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of this goes back to, how the institution works, right? When I did this, I was an IT leader and a project manager, but not a seat at the institution senior leadership table. It was a very relationship focused organization, and I sat with the president's cabinet and said, you gotta run interference for us. You said you want to be here by 2030. We don't have to do it all by 2024. Let's sequence things. That said, we ended up doing a major core revision in the middle of our student implementation, much to my, kicking and screaming, and it happens, right? Some of it, I think you just have to accept. Rapid fire round, just 10-second answers. Curious if you can see the question in the chat. Any thoughts on collecting employee sentiment or feedback on Workday, on successes, challenges? Did you use any specific software tools or mechanisms to collect feedback?
Go ahead, Tej.
I'm trying to think, Matt, we use multiple tools. I'm blanking out on the names to collect feedback. Remember when we went through the exercise together?
Yeah, we did a pulse survey.
Yeah.
You can do this through just about any tool, right? I think we just did it through Microsoft Forms. We did a one question survey of the project team. Yep.
Yeah. So I think there are plenty of tools out there for crowdsourcing feedback and all of that. We on a different project recently, we used something called Padlet. And it's just a digital canvas board where folks are allowed to add messages or certain specific challenges that their experiences anonymously, so folks can really have an open-ended conversation on some of this topic. So there are plenty of tools out there, Matt. I don't have any specific recommendation.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we are at 1 minute before the hour. We want to respect your time. We thank you all so much for your engagement, your time, your questions today, and for joining this webinar. I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Sure thing. I was going to say the same exact thing. I want to say a big thanks to Chris and to Tej for sharing your time and your expertise. Matt, thank you for facilitating. Austin, for your participation. And thank you to all the participants. We had a great turnout today. So if you have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me directly, Amy LaHate. I think I'm probably going to send you all follow-up emails, and you'll all be getting a copy of the recording from today. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Matt, and please enjoy our time together. Have a good day.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ed. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Bye.